Hello everyone, this is Marc Sabatella from Mastering MuseScore, and welcome to the Music Masterclass. So this is my weekly stream that I do on Thursdays, where we actually take a look at different pieces of music that you guys have submitted, and I kind of critique, give my feedback, and kind of try to use it as a point of learning for everyone so we can all learn from each other. And I'm really having a lot of fun doing these, and thanks for being here. So today we have kind of a special thing going on. Special in that I'm going to spend a lot of time on one piece and still barely scratch the surface, I have to say, because it's a very ambitious piece. And sorry, I'm getting my. I always forget to get this happening on my phone so I can monitor things. So just give me a moment. There we go. All right. So this piece is by Trevor that we're going to look at in a minute here. I don't know how we pronounce this. Saborin, maybe. And he had said, he's normally working during this time, so he's not able to be here live to participate in the chat. While I'm on that subject, though, I do want to mention something new that I'm going to start doing. And this is another one of these sort of things that I want to try to do going forward. And I want to make this available as part of the masterclass for free. But I also am it's going to be something that's a special benefit for all access members. I want to have some of the composers actually on the show here. And so I can have, like you see my picture in the lower right, I can have, when I do something like this, where we really do a deep dive into something, I want to be able to have the composer actually on the show. And so I'll be setting things like that up, but be expecting to hear more about how that program might work. Anyhow, before I launch into Trevor's piece, I do want to at least mention something else that's been going on in the community here. Let me get to my right. Is this my right one here? Yes. So this this thread, those of you who are on the community and kind of checking in often may have seen this, and it's pretty amazing at this point that it's gone up to like 92 comments based on 6 bars of music, and that's what got shared. Humble the Music created this little fragment of a piece, and since then there's been a lot of discussion between several people kind of trying to take those 6 bars and work with it, and it's a really fun project going on, and I'm going to come back to that probably next week, depending on if it seems like it's kind of running its course. But right now it's still quite active. But I am going to at least show you those 6 bars because this is what this piece started off life as. So it's a lovely melody with really nice accompaniment to it. And people have been going wild kind of exploring the possibilities of this. And so I'll take a look at that, hopefully in the near future. One thing that I should mention while it's on my mind, when I heard the version that I think Jim Ivey posted, in which the accompaniment was like pizzicato strings, and I think maybe even the melody got changed from cello to something else, although I can't swear to it. Anyhow, one of those versions reminded me very, very much of Enrico Morricone, the film composer. The way the melody and the accompaniment worked reminded me very much of his music. And so if that's something that someone wants to check out, go for it. But in particular, like the piece, the movie with his music in it that I know the best is Cinema Paradiso. And I think I talked about that in one of the very first master classes that I did. In any case, so lots of interesting stuff going on here, and we'll come back. So Yeah, I'm sure what's going on here is not wrecking this piece at all. And by the way, as far as that thing I mentioned with be able to bring in another person, I've done that on a couple occasions before, a couple different ways that I did it. And I think the as long as we don't try to have multiple people try to share screens, that's when I got into trouble. Was when I had Martin on and I tried to have him share his screen and I had my screen share. But as long as it's just me sharing screen and two faces talking, that's actually quite easy to set up. So I look forward to being able to do that sort of thing. Maybe not all the time, but at least sometimes. All right, so here is Trevor's piece, and it's long. So first of all, if let me put the link to it, so people who want to like grab it for themselves, if you feel like it, I can post this link into the chat. Here we go. And so I'm not going to play the whole thing through, all 8 minutes of it, at least not all at once. What I am going to play is sections of it, and we're going to mostly focus today on the exposition, because it's unlike a typical sonata, because he's calling it a sonata ballade, or however, whatever language that's meant to be in, a ballad. It's definitely a lot more expansive than a typical sonata form, but it does have the same basic idea of two contrasting themes in the exposition, and then a development, and then a recapitulation. But the exposition has a significant amount of development in it already. And so just focusing on the exposition, which is probably all we'll have time for today, is already quite a lot. So I'm going to play the full exposition, which also he gave here we go, his analysis, and this is I'm going to be looking at. And so I'm going to so also post this link to Trevor's own analysis. And when I say analysis, I mean it's really a breakdown of what's happening. F minor. No, it's not F minor, it's F sharp minor, but I guess the MuseScore.com doesn't want to put a pound sign in the URL because that actually doesn't work. So it got turned into F minor. Okay. But it works. All right, so I'm going to play the music, but what you'll see here is the first theme is not that long. It's 19 measures long. But then, as he says, there's a lengthy transition, which is longer than the actual theme. And this is this modulation and development, really, of that theme before we hear the second theme. And the second theme is longer and broader than the first, right? The first is fairly short. Like I said, 19 measures. The second theme is like 40 measures plus long, and it has to it, two sub-themes within it. And so I want to make sure that we identify these sections and see how they all fit together, because already just looking at those first 94 measures, you're looking at a significant chunk of music already. It's not just here's an 8-bar A theme and here's an 8-bar B theme, there's my exposition. This is a significant composition before we get to the official development. All right, so I'm going to come here and play the piece. And I've been getting, I got feedback from someone about the volume level. And as I've said, I can't know for sure how the mix is going out. But I've actually turned up the volume on the music quite a bit from where it was before. So you'll all have to give me feedback if it's not working for you. But anyhow, here is the exposition of the Sonata Ballade in F sharp minor. That is the exposition. I'm going to play a little bit into the development just so we hear a little bit of that, but then I'm going to come back and start talking a little bit more about what's happening. But you'll hear some of the same themes being developed here. Anyhow, that's some development. And when I talk about it being development, I mean, you don't have to get very deep into your analysis of the piece to recognize certain little figures like this. Right, that little 16th figure we've been introduced to that theme during the exposition, and that's a significant part of what's happening in the development. But there's also, things like this, right here. Right, that was a significant theme also in the exposition. But it's just a motif from that theme. Was kind of the original version, and this is, just taking that one little motif from that theme and playing around with it, moving it around. So yeah, I see a couple questions that came in, and I definitely want to address them. And Dave actually hit on one thing right away that I would have commented on also. Yeah, no, this is a pickup bar, right? By all rights, this should be a pickup. Now, one thing that Trevor mentioned was that he created this originally using, well, he mentioned it not in here. He mentioned it, I think, in the chat, but unfortunately that got cut off from me because he posted it before it started, and I can't see it anymore. But his comment was that he started this using Finale, using the free version of Finale, which is quite limited, and then exported it to Music XML and brought it into MuseScore. So it's possible that that's just something that hasn't gotten, hasn't been changed yet, and maybe he has some special reason to not want it to be a pickup. But what I would do is select those beats and then Control Delete, and now it's a pickup. Right now, you should also go right click, go into Measure Properties, and exclude from Measure Count, so that it doesn't get counted as measure 1, it gets counted as measure 0. So and when I did that, it obviously messed up something in terms of the clef. What did I do? So I'm going to have to close this thing and reopen it because I don't know what the heck that was. Did he write that in a different clef? So something weird happened with the clef, right? And I wasn't paying attention to how, when, where, but somehow deleting those beats, and that might have been having something to do with the Music XML and the Finale, whatever. So I can't speak to what happened there. I'm not going to worry about it. All right. So one other comment that he made was that he wrote portions of it at the piano, the main themes, and then wrote other parts of it away from the piano. The writing at the piano is definitely something that if you're going to write for piano, I definitely recommend. I mean, there's a whole school of thought in composing that says, well, don't write at an instrument. Think the thoughts and get your ideas clear without using the instrument. And I've gone off on whole little monologues about that and why relying too much on the instrument, kind of takes away your initial idea, because now you're hearing what you played instead of what you thought. And that's all valid. But if you're going to write for an instrument, at some point you got to sit down and try to play it on that instrument or think through it on that instrument to find out if it's playable. So I say that because right off the bat, I can't play that. My hand will not allow me to play that particular 10th there from F sharp to A. Now, because the pedal is down, I could roll it a little bit, and that's fine. Rachmaninoff is known for having giant hands and would write intervals like that to play with his left hand, and this whole piece, or at least this portion of it anyhow, is quite reminiscent of Rachmaninoff. But it's definitely something you want to think about. In general, I will advise you, when writing for piano, don't write more than an octave if you expect people to be able to play it. tenths are difficult for most people to play on the piano. I don't have particularly large hands. They do extend. Like if you hold your hand out like I am here, uh, I have almost like a straight line here. A lot of people only get this kind of angle thing here, but my my thumb does extend there because I do enough of this stuff and try to reach tenths. But in any case, like the combination white key to black key, white key to white key, I can kind of reach, but combinations that involve white and black keys are much harder because then the rest of my hand gets in the way. So in any case, it's something to consider. It's if you write these tens, realize that a lot of people are going to have to roll them to play it. And maybe that's okay. Like later on in the piece, he does that in the right hand. He writes something that's like crazy. I'm sure he couldn't have played it himself. Can I find it? No, of course not. But there were places where in the right hand there was basically an arpeggiated giant interval to play, and I don't know why I can't find it now because I thought I would just see it right off the bat because I haven't gone down far enough. Oh yeah, right here, right this. That is not playable as such, but he at least notated specifically arpeggiated. Well, whether he had notated or not, everyone's going to have to do it that way. So whether this is arpeggiated or not, he's kind of suggesting, well, if you can make it all at once, do it. But most of us won't be able to, and that'll just be okay. So yeah, Finale Notepad is the free version of Finale, and it's like a 10-year-old version at this point, but it still works, and it does export to Music XML, and it will import, and it'll import a regular Finale file. I mean, it'll open Finale file. So I use it all the time. Well, not all the time, but often when someone has a Finale, something they've done in Finale, and we want to see what it would look like in MuseScore or whatever else, I will use Finale Notepad to import it and then export to Music XML and then bring it into MuseScore. So in that sense, it's actually fairly full-featured. You just can't actually do much with it, but using it as just a open scores and export them to Music XML, it can handle most of what can happen. So it's very discouraging to want to play. Oh yeah, tenths are stride. Whoever invented the piano, I've made this point before, but man, I wish they had just made the keys a little smaller. When they first came up with how wide these keys should be, it was based on whatever, and I'm sure hands were basically smaller then, and they were thinking, we want people to be able to reach an octave, and so they designed the keys that way. But realistically, had they just made them just a little narrower, a lot of people today could reach tenths. Probably back in 1500s, reaching tenths wasn't such a thing. Probably on average, hands were smaller. That's my guess, because people have gotten bigger over the years, right? But in any case, yeah, most people can reach a ninth, but that's not very useful. Reaching tenths would be super useful, but you can make lemonade out of that by just choosing to introduce a little, not trying to play the notes together, but add a little oomph to them by making an arpeggio, or just playing one on one beat and then playing the second note a beat later. So in any case, that's that. It's not necessarily you can write this if you know that that's what's going to happen. I wouldn't recommend in this piece actually taking this and playing the top note a beat later, but I'm saying like in a stride kind of setting, that's how I often get away with it. I'll just take that tenth and just break it up like that. So here, this is already from the very beginning. There's nothing hard about the beginning, right? Other than that tenth. That's your clue right off the bat that, maybe I'm not going to be able to play this. But you look at it and otherwise, I might be able to handle this other than those tenths. But then you very quickly get into stuff like this. That's becoming a little, most people's left hands aren't as agile as their right hand. So we're getting a hint that this is going to be a little more virtuosic of a piece. And then once we get into some of this stuff here, actually, I mean, this is all perfectly playable. This is well within the realm of what a sufficiently advanced pianist can play. Yeah, and Dave makes the point that a smaller keyboard, well, the problem is there's very few keyboards that are only a little bit smaller. There's keyboards that are a lot smaller, and yeah, they're hard to play on. But I suspect if the keyboard were made like 90% of its current size, we might actually be okay with it. But so this is all quite playable. Now, speaking of the notation of it, Trevor, you mentioned that maybe some things didn't come over from Finale the way you'd want, or maybe this is how you notated it. But I feel like these offbeat quarter notes, which is what they are, right? These are syncopated quarter notes. They should be notated as such. That's a quarter note. That's a quarter note, right? That's a quarter note, and so on. So I'm going to undo those changes, but you still want to break up the one across the middle of the bar, because anything in 4/4 time like that, you want the first half of the measure and the second half of the measure to be visually obvious. So we're going to keep this B broken up with a tie, but the other ones don't need to be. And frankly, it looks really awkward. There's some situations in which some people might choose to do that, but if you're going to do that, don't also beam them together. So I would be opening up the beam palette and going in here and breaking the beam there also. You generally don't tie notes that are also beamed. That's a kind of a general rule of thumb. There's a few kind of unfortunate corner case situations that can show up in compound meter where particular strange rhythms involving sixteenths and syncopations and stuff can sometimes require you to both tie and beam two notes together in order to show the beat the way you want to show it. But it's very rare that would come up, and it should never come up in 4/4. So in any case, this is all perfectly playable, but there's other passages that get to be like, I'm pretty sure for me personally, I might not be able to play the piece. Where's that section where the left hand just starts going wild? So I have a feeling this. Oh, okay. So now here's the thing. Pay attention to what's going on here. I was looking at this at first and go, well, I can't do this. Because it's 3 octaves, but also the triplets against the 16th notes. And I was imagining like my pinky having to play the bottom note and my thumb having to play the 16th, and thinking I'm not going to pull that. I can barely do triplets against 16ths between my hands. However, that's the case here. I think that's his intent. I think his intent is to play the chord with the right hand and then use the pedal to sustain it, and then the right hand comes down to play these notes. So in notating that, you would want to draw a line. There's a thing called a note attached line. So you click this note, control click that note, and go to edit. No, not edit. Sorry, add lines, note anchored line, and it draws a line there, and then that's sort of your clue. And then you can right now it connects the middles of the notes, which isn't really what you want, so you could double click it and kind of fiddle with it until it looks more like you want. But so that's a possibility. The other possibility is to take these notes here, and I'm going to control click them all, because that's probably the easiest way for me to get done what I want. And now I'm going to use Control Shift Up Arrow. Let me think about that. Is that right? Yeah, Control Shift Up Arrow to move them to the top staff. So that's cross staff notation. And that would also make it a little clearer that they're meant to be played with the right hand. And then I could also maybe flip their stems down. There's a lot of different ways of doing the notation to make that a little clearer. But that becomes important. I'm going to, I keep undoing my changes so that I don't mess up the piece, even though I know I can download it again. By the way, remember when we first started doing these master classes, we had someone who was coming in and asking a lot of questions about enharmonic spellings of things and double sharps and so forth. This is the perfect not explanation, but example of why double sharps are a thing. This line is ba-da-dum. You can hear it going down, ba-da-dum, and it starts on a G sharp. So if we're going to go down from G sharp when we bring up the piano keyboard, it's ba-da-dum. If I spelt that G sharp, G sharp, it would look like a flat line. And I'd need extra accidentals. I'd need not just the natural on the G, but I'd need to reestablish the sharp on the G sharp. By spelling it F double sharp, it's actually improved the contour of it. It looks like what it is, and your hand, therefore, in reading it, wants to just do that, move down. It doesn't get kind of crossed up and confused a little bit. So this is a good example of that. When you have that type of line, a lower neighbor figure, you do that. You write it as a double sharp. There's also situations where, based on what key you're in, the leading tone, like at this point, are we in C sharp minor? Yeah, we're in C sharp minor at this point. So F double sharp isn't a thing. But if we were in G sharp minor, then F double sharp would be how you spell the leading tone. If you want to spell out a G sharp minor scale, the leading tone is F double sharp. That's not the case here, though. But it might be other places in the piece. I would expect that to be true. So so let's start looking a little more at the actual development of the theme. I mentioned that the theme itself is short. Well, let's hear the theme. It's only 19 measures. That's actually the main motif right there, right? It's a 4-measure motif. And then what happens next is the same thing again. More or less, right? It's the same 4-bar motif, then developed. It ends a little differently. So it's like A prime, right? It's a little 4-measure motif that then repeated with a slightly different ending. Super common type of figure. I believe I should know this. I really should, but I think that's what they call a period in classical analysis. I mean, I've had to teach this stuff, but I always have to remember it ever because, frankly, in day-to-day life, we don't use that terminology. But you use it when you're teaching music theory and analysis. The period form is like a melody, and then that same melody repeated, but with a different ending on it. Essentially, is my recollection of what the term period means. All right, so we have that period there. We have our A prime, and then we get another statement of the same thing melodically, but this time there's more motion in the left hand, right? The first statement had no motion. The long notes just had nothing, right? So space, bum, bum, just nothing happening. Here, we start off that way, nothing. Now we get that ba-da-dum while that note is sustaining. So what he's doing is gradually introducing motion. He's allowing the first statement to be the most kind of chorale-like, the most simple, the most just let half notes be half notes. The second version of that same melody starts off that way, but then introduces that motion. And then it continues that motion with quarter notes in the left hand here, right? The original version just had half notes in the left hand. The restatement here moves them up to quarter notes. And now, the second half of the period gets the ba-da-ba-da-ba-dum, the little 16th note figure. Right? I'm sorry about all the glitchiness in the audio, but that's just life. All right, so there is now where we start to hear a new little bit of melody. Because so far, it was really just that 4-bar theme, and then that 4-bar theme with a slightly different ending on it. Then the exact same 4-bar theme with a slightly different, rhythmic treatment in the left hand. And then that same 4-bar theme with more rhythmic treatment in the left hand, the figure happening. Now we get a new little ending on it. It's not the same as this ending, right? This ending, that was the second ending. But now we get this. It's going to elaborate. So that's the end now of that theme. So really, the theme ended for all practical purposes after 16 bars. This is the end of the theme, really. Right? Because this is this figure right over here. It's this figure here, and that's essentially the end of the original statement of the theme. Here, it's modified a little bit because it's given this extra little tag where we take that same rhythmic figure, bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum ba bum, and going up a little bit each time from A to B to C sharp. So he's added this little tag to it here, and now we get that happening in the right hand now, and it's becoming its own development. And so when he says that he then has an extended, he calls it lengthy transition, modulates through several keys, while riffing is a jazz term, on fragments of theme one. It's development. This is a development of that theme. So he's giving us the development of the first theme before introducing the second one. That's not unheard of, but I am pointing out that that's really what's happening here. Is this really does kind of, you know, if people are wondering, well, what does a development look like? Here's a way of developing a single theme. But it's not just the theme, because the theme is bum 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 ba-dum ba-dum bum bum. That's the theme. But there's that extra little ba-da-ba-da-ba-dum. That's like a secondary motif. Because when you're going to develop something, it helps to have two things to play with, not just one. Even like a Baroque fugue, we say is monothematic. It only has one theme. Yeah, but there is the counter subject. And the counter subject often provides additional material to play with. So in this piece here, he's now giving us this kind of development of that theme. So let's hear some of that development, that mini development, right? Because we're not in the development section. We're still in the exposition. But he's like, I'm not ready to go to secondary theme yet. I'm just not ready for it. Or he's ready to start his journey there, but it's a long journey there. Ah, that's annoying. Let me try that again. Yeah, that is life when I'm trying to do a live broadcast, right? You know what? I'm going to also switch over to the MuseScore playback, because it will happily, it's not as resource intensive. And so let me just try going over here and seeing how this goes. Here's where it really starts modulating, right? Okay, so I know that was a little quieter, but at least it didn't get glitchy on us. So flipping back to MuseScore then, really what's happening is the whole first chunk here is, he talked about it modulating a lot, but he's not really trying to modulate very hard yet. This, still F sharp minor. Okay, at this point, we could say we're in C sharp minor. Okay, I guess it is modulating, but it's not as dramatic as it gets later. A major. And then back to kind of C sharp minor. Yeah, it's modulating. I will grant that. It is modulating right off the bat. I think I misspoke. E major, G sharp minor, and then it's back to F sharp minor. And now this is the part, I guess, that I was thinking. Still F sharp minor. Still F sharp minor. Still F sharp minor. Now it's starting to modulate faster, right? So it did do a quick series of modulation, but they were all related keys, right? So it was a little journey of modulation that if you were trying to write a simpler sonata exposition, I would claim that this whole section, starting at measure 19, going up until it settles back in F sharp minor in 27, was kind of optional. Because this is where the journey to the new key, actually, yeah, even this is still. Okay, I'm going to just do a little bit of surgery so you can hear this. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with it. This is nice how he's really been expansive. But I will say that if you're trying to make a simpler piece, I'm going to cut out this. Boink. Watch this. I'm going to cut out those measures. And now we're going to hear the end of the exposition, or not the end of the exposition, the end of the first theme with all the first bit of kind of key meandering removed. And so, because remember, it moved through different keys, but then it came back and settled in F sharp minor. I just cut all of that stuff out. And now we're going to hear it just go straight to the part where it really starts modulating to set up the B theme. Now is the modulation. And setting up the final little bit. So I'm actually surprised that worked as well as it did. I almost had to do a double take to make sure I didn't miss anything. But what happened is, yeah, this is where the change was. It was, this repeated A is my main indication that this wasn't how he actually wrote it. If I change this to say a B, just to feel like it leads there better, he totally could have written that and I wouldn't have known the difference. So in any case, I'm not telling you to make your pieces shorter. If you have a lot in you, go for it. But I am saying, don't feel compelled to do everything that Trevor did there. Trevor said, you know what? I'm done with my A theme. I'm just not ready to give you my B theme yet. So I'm going to walk around in circles for a little while, move through some different keys, go through some different stuff, develop this one theme for a little bit, and come back to my original key. Then start my progression to move to the B theme. And what I'm saying is that little cut and paste operation, or not even paste, just the cut operation I did, shows that it works kind of surprisingly well without all that. Let me play it one more time. Here's where I did the cut, right to there. And at that point, he's in A, right? He has managed to get from F sharp to A, F sharp minor to A, which isn't a big journey, right? F sharp minor to A, relative major. Could have done it quicker still, but there's no reward for getting there sooner. You want to take your time, but this 4 bars feels like a good amount of time. This little modulation, by the way, here from F sharp to basically B major, and by using this C major chord to get to that B, this to analyze this harmonically would require a little bit of sleight of hand, in which I would say, well, there's an augmented sixth kind of sound happening here, the C to A sharp. If this was in the key of E, this would be the German augmented sixth going to 5. If you take my harmony and chord progressions course, you'll understand what all those terms are. But in any case, he's using some fairly standard techniques harmonically, but pushing them in ways, because I said in the key of E, that would have made sense, but he's not using it to get the key of E. He's using it to actually get to the key of B. He's using this C to get to B. This is more of a modernistic thing. It's more of a jazz thing. You probably see Debussy use it sometimes also, but it's definitely not. It's definitely pushing past Mozart and so forth. Not that, because harmonically, up until this point, it's been relatively simple. So let me actually, let me talk about that before I delve into the deeper stuff here. The whole exposition, if we look at this as being an F sharp minor, the only notes not in the key is the E sharp, the leading tone. And it always resolves, as expected, to F sharp, more or less, always. So that whole A theme is totally diatonic to F sharp minor. It's totally diatonic, it has that leading tone in it, right? It's very simple. It's all based on the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord. It's really harmonically simple. deceptively so, because of where it's eventually going to be going, right? Even here, it's got, it's when it gets rhythmically more complicated, it's still the case the only accidental involved is the E sharp as a leading tone to get to the F sharp. So he's, until we reach that spot. Well, okay, let me undo my changes again, because of course, when I said he's doing a lot of moving through different keys here, he is moving through keys. He's introducing chromatic passing tones, secondary dominance, other stuff going on during that quasi-development section, for sure. But the original theme had none of it, and so that's fine. That's perfectly fine. There's no. It shows you that your theme can be simple. It can be diatonic, and yet you can still do amazing things with it. That's maybe one of the lessons here. So again, I'm going to skip just to where my little section was. My section, the section that I was focusing on here, right here. So now that we're in B, and the same thing here. Now that we're in B, it's totally diatonic in B. This D sharp, that D sharp, it's all the key, right? And this is our leading tone. And then again, same technique of using this F chord to get to E. And if we think of ourselves as now being in the key of A, and this time we are actually in the key of A, this is the 5 chord. And this is what's called the German, well, this time it's not German. Oh yeah, it is, because that is a D sharp. I gotta make sure I'm following the accidentals correctly, but yeah, that is a D sharp. There's no natural on it. Okay, so that is technically speaking a German augmented 6th chord, so built on this root of F or bass note of F. To a jazzer, this is a tritone substitution, right? This is F7 going to E. This E, though, immediately, rather than asserting itself as a key, establishes itself as the 5 chord, because you're going to hear a measure later, we're in A. And at that point, we're in A. And we stay in A now for the next 4 bars. Right? We're in A. And I've mentioned before that in sonatas that are in minor keys, it's really typical that the B theme would be in the key of A. So he's kind of setting us up to expect that, right? He's setting us up to expect the key of A to come next. But that doesn't actually happen. When the secondary theme comes, it immediately modulates to C sharp minor. So in other words, the original 5, right? In F sharp minor, the 5 is C sharp. So he really goes to C sharp minor as for most of the actual B theme. But I'm not ready to talk about the B theme yet, because I still want to talk about some stuff that's going on here. I talked about how diatonic the original theme was, but he's actually doing something kind of cool here that's worthy of note. Even though we're in A at this point, this D sharp is not in the key of A, right? He is introducing this, this is scale degree 5, 5, sharp 4, 5, or if you prefer solfege, sol, fi, sol. I should remember my hand signals for this, because I just taught it last semester, but do I? No. Sol, fi, is that fi? Sol? Sorry. So he's giving us actually our first little bit of melodic chromaticism in a place that's otherwise simple. Like, there's all sorts of chromaticism. I mean, all that stuff that I temporarily deleted is all sorts of chromaticism going through here, right? This is, he's moving through different keys and doing all sorts of different stuff and there's, if you tear that apart, you'll find, more chromatic passing tones and things like that. But we expect that, right? That whole passage is super chromatic. This is a passage where we're actually now settling very clearly into a key and just sitting there and not doing anything complicated harmonically, but 1, 3, 5, sharp 5. I mean, sharp 4, 5, boodum, ba-da-dum. That's like, you know, The Simpsons. That's that line right there. Or Maria. It's got that sharp 4, even though he's not leaping directly to it. But it's that sonic idea of a line that emphasizes this sharp 4. Even though he's not leaping directly to it, it's on the beat, right? It's what's called an accented appoggiatura. Actually, in this case, it's a neighbor tone because he's stepping into it. But it's accented. It's on the beat. So, and then again here, same thing in the right hand. So he's set up A as our key, and then immediately comes to C sharp minor. Now I wonder about the spelling of this note here. Okay, so here is where G. I'm trying to think of what's actually going on harmonically. I haven't thought through it. Yeah, I'd have to think through that a little more to tell you what's happening harmonically. G, D sharp, B. Someone who's thinking more quickly and clearly than I am right now, could probably give me a good answer to that. It is G, B, and D sharp. If I think of that as our chord, it's you know, it's kind of an augmented chord, right? It's a G, a B, and a D sharp spells an augmented chord, but I'm pretty sure that's not harmonically what's happening. It's some sort of passing motion though to set up this G sharp, because this G sharp then gets the B sharp, which is the leading tone in C sharp minor. So this is how he's accomplishing this modulation to C sharp minor. So I see someone saying hi to Vasily, so I assume he's here on there. Yeah, I think that's what that name is. And so, feel free to chime in with that, because I would have to sit down and actually play this on the piano to think through what's actually to think through. Yeah, it's a really curious little figure to me. If it was a secondary dominant into that, it would be spelt differently, right? This could have been spelt as an F double sharp to get to that G sharp as a leading tone into it. So I'm not gonna stress about it. It sounds nice. It is nice. In any case, now that he's gotten to C sharp minor, we're on that secondary theme. So I said that today we were, you know, not even going to get, you know, that it would be all we could do to get through the exposition. Well, we're not going to get through the exposition. I'm going to get into the B theme, and then I'll have to kind of like trail off, because we could spend forever talking about these details, and I would love to, and probably will, but I'll have to break it up. So he's establishing now a new feel, and it's based on this long note. Right now it's long notes with a quarter note passage, a quarter note pulse that he's establishing here, a syncopated quarter note pulse. Boom, boom. And this is now our motif, our motif for our main motif for the B section. And he's got really nicely brought out accompaniment. And again, I'm assuming he worked this out at the piano enough to figure out that he can play that C sharp with his thumb, come down really quickly to play the low G sharp, come back and play the C sharp and get this happening. I mean, this is pretty jumpy. This is, you know, this is harder to play than it might seem, just because of the wideness of the intervals, but the pedal helps you a lot in pulling this sort of stuff out, pulling this off. So, there's a motif now. So here's that same motif, basically down a third. It's not exactly the same motif, because the original motif, ba-do-dum, ba, But it's got the repeated note there. So again, it's like a repeated motif, but with a slight difference on it. And now we get another version of that motif. Right? So this type of thing has a name in Humble Music. I know you're asking about rhythm names, and I throw out the word period as a description of that type of form, where it's kind of a melody, and then that same melody, but with a different little final couple of measures on it. This has a name too, and I wish I could remember what it is, but it's basically a melody, and then a almost identical version of that melody, and then a third version of that melody that's more significantly different, that's expanded at the end. Super, super common type of melodic device. Tell it to me once. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. Tell it to me again. Ba-da-da-da-da-dum. And then tell it to me a third time with more detail. Ba-da-da-da-da-da-da-da-dum. So I'm not getting you the right pitches, but that's fine. That is a nutshell, a perfect example of how to take a simple 2-measure motif and turn it into an 8-bar melody, right? So let's just hear that right there. It's a beautiful 8-bar melody. So that's really nice, and right, it's just a simple, just like the A theme was simple, our B theme is simple. He gave us all that complexity in that kind of quasi-development, that modulatory section. He gave us all that complexity there, but the themes he is working from are super, super simple. So if I say that this is in C sharp minor, he didn't change key signature for it, which is pretty typical. But if you think about the key of C sharp minor, what it is adding is that D sharp, right? That would be in the key. So if we think of this as being in the key of C sharp minor, that's the additional note. But this in the key of C sharp minor, again, here's that sharp 4 scale degree that he hinted at here. That is a little hint of our melody right there. Ba-do-da-bum, boo, ba-do-da-bum. That is a little hint about what we're about to hear here. It's not the same. Oh, speaking of notation, Trevor, courtesy accidental, right? You don't have one here. You got your double sharp on the F double sharp. Next measure is an F sharp. So you can add that just using the toolbar, but go download yourself the courtesy accidentals plugin. It's going to save your life on pieces like this, because all I can do now, what I can do now, is just select the whole piece, go to plugins, accidentals, add courtesy accidentals, and it's going to take a little while. Oh, no, it didn't take that long. There it is. It added all the courtesy accidentals I need. Beautiful, beautiful plugin. I couldn't do this kind of music without it, because otherwise it's way too much thinking. So grab yourself the courtesy accidentals plugin. It'll make life much, much simpler. So and I'm actually going to leave that in place because it's going to help me out this last little bit here. So this melody is quite simple, but it's using a little bit of chromaticism, right? It's got that scale degree 5, sharp 4, 5, and then this bit of chromaticism here, root, leading tone root, and then the flatted 7th, and then more chromaticism here, this chromatic line, and then coming into this more diatonic part, and it ends on this 5 chord here, this G sharp, but not as a major 5 chord, right? It actually feels like G sharp minor there, maybe. And it feels like that because of this B natural here, because we never got to hear another B sharp. B, B, I'm singing B. Right? So at that point, we're hearing the G sharp, and our ear basically still hears the B. So we're still hearing a G sharp minor here. He hasn't really told us about a 5 chord. So there's a sense in which the harmony here, Trevor, I'm assuming you did this on purpose because you're handling everything so masterfully here. But I will say this is maybe one of the first choices you made that I might have thought about differently. I mean, I already talked about that section that I said was sort of optional, that if you wanted to shorten the piece, you could just cut out that little bit of meandering there at the end of the A theme. But it's a lovely section. There's nothing wrong with keeping it there. But this part here, I have to say, feels a little cruder harmonically. The fact that your A theme was all about just the 1 and the 5, 1, 4, and 5, kind of, really simple diatonic stuff, it set things up beautifully. But I feel like there's some missed opportunity for more harmonic interest at the end of this motif here. This is really nice. Now, this going straight from a 1 chord to a 5 minor is fine, but you introduce this chromaticism, and then it just comes back to more kind of diatonic stuff. I kind of feel like more something interesting harmonically would have been welcome in measure 53. That is just my take on that. Now, when the theme then repeats, so just like with the original A theme, he then repeated the same thing with more complex accompaniment. Here, he's repeating it with just octaves in the right hand. The accompaniment is essentially the same. But now we're going to get those same. I mentioned that it's just a 2-bar theme that he kind of blew up into 8. Now he's expanding that into just doubling it in octaves. Same theme. But, right, modulating. So he's taking that same motif, but now going other places with it, right? And so this is the sort of thing that I might have expected a hint of in 53. And I understand wanting to hold it back, but I still feel like it was maybe a missed opportunity to do something there that felt less diatonic. Or maybe even just more triadic, because I'm not feeling I hear like not hearing a triad there. Is it a minor? Is it a major? I don't know. But yeah, there's something going on. But anyhow, this section here is exactly the same. Now, it's different, right? Because he's going to a different note. He's going to A, and he didn't go to A before. He came back to C sharp. So it's now taking that same motif and starting to develop it differently. And this time he manages to move it to D major, right? That's a D major chord right there. And coming back to C sharp minor. So he's doing nice, interesting harmonic things going on here. And then this is that, actually, this chord, I'll have to think more again. It's like 2 different chords that are happening in my brain together here. So again, that would take a little unpacking to understand exactly what's happening. But this is our 5 chord. At least it would be if we're still in F sharp minor. It looks like he's giving us a deceptive resolution. So that F double sharp suggests the kind of a 5 of a 5. This suggests 5 of 5 going to 5, the leading tone into it. But this stuff on top is something else. So again, I'd have to dig deeper, really look at it, think through it to understand what's happening harmonically. Trevor, I'm sure you knew what you were doing here. But it's actually kind of noteworthy in its dissonance. I like dissonance. I'm nothing against dissonance, but it's dissonance of a form that we haven't heard yet. Pretty much everything else has been, triad sounds, 7th chord kinds of sounds. This is the most dissonant sound we've heard yet, I think. And then the deceptive resolution of that G sharp into A. And now this is. He mentions that the B theme is itself composed of 2 themes. So the first motif is the ba-da-da-da-da-dum. This is the second motif here. Check out this motif here. Have you heard that motif before? Yes, you have. Do-da-ba-da-da-da-bum. That is boop, this guy. It's that motif. Boo-da-do-da-dum. It's basically that same motif, more or less, with some differences to it, but it's basically taking that same motif and do-da-da-da, right, and expanding it into quarter notes, and that's what he mentioned that he did, and that's actually so bar 61, not a dissonance. So the thing is, dissonance is a technical term. This A against G sharp against G in the same chord, those are dissonant intervals. Dissonant doesn't mean unpleasant, and so it might not be unpleasant to you. But dissonance is dissonance. It's a different thing from unpleasant. And so you need to separate that out in your head. Dissonance is good. Even dominant seventh chords are dissonant. That interval of the seventh from the root to the seventh, or between the tritone between the third and seventh, those are dissonant intervals. They create tension that needs to resolve. So dissonance doesn't mean unpleasant. It just means creates tension. Is tension that is then resolved. That's the resolution right there. So it's important to understand the role of dissonance and to really have an appreciation for what causes that dissonance so that you can create the correct, the type of dissonance, the type of tension you want in your music, because you want tension and release. And so you want a good understanding of what causes tension and what causes that tension to be released so that you can create that for your listener. So anyhow, I kind of want to wrap up this part of what I'm talking about here by just, I mentioned that do-da-da-da-dum he is saying that this is basically that da-da-da-da-dum, but slowed down into quarter notes. It's a little bit of a stretch, right? Does the ear recognize it as such? Maybe, maybe not, but it was a conscious choice. And now he's developing that idea, right? So now he's taking that B theme and sort of developing it a little bit. Now back to the original. So I call B theme. Within the big B theme, there's a little A and a B, right? Within that. And so the ba-da-da-da-da-dum was the A within the B. This do-da-da-da-da-da was the B within the B. Here's back to the A within the B again. What he's doing here is like brilliant tying together of the two themes. The right hand is playing that B theme, the big B theme, the opening motif of the B theme, while the left hand is doing that motif that comes from the A theme. And I have the same comment for you about this section, Trevor, that it feels like sort of a missed opportunity harmonically in these measures, and I'm not sure why I feel that way. I just and here you are just calling us G sharp minor by giving us the B. The previous time I said, well, just the ear is hearing it, because that was the last B we heard was B natural, not B sharp. But here let's go about it. And that same series of modulations to B. And now bringing in the triplets brings in a new rhythmic element, right? That's one of the things that's happening here is starting with that repeated eighth note pattern, but then saying, hey, I want to tell you about triplets because it's building some rhythmic intensity, building bigger chords in the left hand. Now some lovely little dramatic stuff going on. I say lovely, but of course, MuseScore is good. And we made it through the exposition. So that's what I will tell you about this. So this is the exposition, and again, it's got some really nice development within it, even before you get to the official development section. So that's all. Yeah, this is a wonderful piece, Trevor. I'm really enjoying cutting, digging into it like this. And I realize that, in talking about this piece, my comments are mostly talking about all the great things you did and helping other people understand them. So I don't know how much help I am to you in this, other than these couple little places where I gave you minor little suggestions about the notation, or that one place where I thought harmonically was a missed opportunity, or places where I thought maybe this was a little harder to play than necessary. Like, I don't know that I could play this right here. That's it. That this is like, 16th notes are not a problem. It's 16th notes with double stops in the middle of them, and then a triple stop here, and then the figuring out how to actually play that. If you work that at the piano and you can play it, great. But I would definitely, I'm all about trying to make things that sound impressive without being as hard to play as they might sound. So there's possibly a place where if you figured that out already, great. Otherwise, you might want to think about whether there's a way to slightly simplify what's going on in places like that, to simplify them. Anyhow, just marvelous, marvelous, marvelous job. And yeah, that's the end of the exposition. And in a future week, maybe not next week, because maybe we'll do other things, I don't know, but we'll look more at the actual development and see how he develops those themes. So, all right. So again, I want to thank everyone for being here. Thanks to everyone for, kind of hanging and hearing all this, participating in the discussion, asking the questions. And again, I think in future times, I want to be able to bring guests on. And so I'm going to set up ways of doing. I mean, I have technologically how to do that, and it'll be something that I'll be bringing in some all access members as sort of a benefit there to be part of that. But everyone gets to benefit from the fact that we'll have these guests on there. So I'll be doing that maybe starting next week, maybe not. We'll see. We'll see how it all comes together. But in any case, I want to thank everyone again for being here. My name is Marc Sabatella with the Mastering MuseScore School and Community. This has been the Music Masterclass, in which we really dig into music and talk about everything that we can come up with, everything that seems relevant to the pieces that you all are writing. So keep writing music, keep submitting it to the community. I love that collaborative effort that's going on right now, so I definitely want to look at that again. And, we'll look at that in a little more detail and show some of the stuff that people have been coming up with. And just keep submitting pieces. And I look forward to looking into them, ask questions about them so that I have things that I can talk about with them. But I'll always find things to talk about, right? Never at a shortage for words. So thanks, everyone. And I'll see you next week.